People think because I can make them laugh on the stage, I will be able to make them laugh in person. That is not the case at all. I am essentially a rather quiet, dull person who just happens to be a performer. For a long time, this actor was a true global cinema phenomenon. He is known as the multifaceted Edmund Blackadder, the infantile and spontaneous Mr. Bean, the confident agent Johnny English, and now, the man who hates bees. Rowan Atkinson has long won the hearts of not only British audiences, but has also become one of the most beloved comedians worldwide. But at some point, he disappeared from our screens, leaving fans with nothing but questions. How did the actor's career unfold? How did a clumsy boy with an unusual appearance and a stutter become a global star with millions in the bank? How many car accidents has the actor been in? And what changes in his personal life almost cost him his career? You will learn all this and more in today's video. So grab something tasty, get comfortable, and let us get started. Rowan Sebastian Atkinson was born on January 6, 1955, in a maternity hospital in Gosforth, England, to Eric and Ella May. His father was a farmer, and his mother took care of the household. Their farm was located in Stocksfield, which locals jokingly called the Bel Air of Newcastle. The family was quite wealthy, thanks to Rowan's grandfather, Edward. He once bought 200 acres lands in the west to Canada for $6 and worked as a farmer their economy for 10 years, before returning to his native England. His business acumen and smart investments ensured that his family never knew poverty and had a comfortable fortune, including a chain of cinemas. Later, this fact would play a key role in Atkinson's choice of profession. Rowan's father, Eric, was a well-educated man. He graduated from Oxford and followed in his father's footsteps, buying a 400-acre farm, starting a family, and owning several businesses. The Atkinsons had 3 sons. Their first son, Paul, unfortunately died as a child, so Ella later gave birth to Rodney, then Rupert, and finally Rowan. The boys helped their father with farm work from an early age. They harvested crops and cleaned barns filled with mice. According to Rodney's recollections, even as a 5-year-old, Rowan enjoyed crushing mice with a shovel or whatever was at hand. Life for the Atkinsons was not hard, but it had its quirks. They did not have a television at home, and the emphasis was always on education. Rowan's future was planned by his parents from the cradle, following in his older brother's footsteps. He first attended St. Elizabeth's Kindergarten in Stocksfield. Then, at the age of 8, he went to the Chorister School in Durham, and later transferred to the state school St. Bees in Cumbria. Among the teachers, Rowan was nicknamed Atkinson III because he was the 3rd Atkinson to attend their school. However, his classmates came up with more colorful nicknames for him. The thing is, young Rowan had a rather unusual appearance, unlike his older brothers. In his early teens, his eyes bulged, ears stuck out, and his lips and nose seemed to go on forever. These disproportionate facial features and his slightly greenish skin tone did not make him popular. Instead, they made him look like an alien. On top of that, he had a stutter. Because of his unconventional looks, classmates called him Dopey, Zuni, Moonman, Green Man, and Groomin. This did not affect Rowan negatively. In fact, it inspired him, and he often used his appearance to make his classmates laugh. Even at his first boarding school, St. Elizabeth's, Atkinson began acting in small plays. His love for theater continued at Durham Chorister School and beyond. His passion for art, especially comedy, began to show in early childhood. When Rowan was 9, he was taken to see comedian Terry Scott perform at the Royal Theatre in Newcastle, and it left a lasting impression on him. However, his first true passion was cinema. The Empire Cinema in Consett was part of his grandfather's chain, and Rowan watched the latest films there. He also visited his grandfather at home and watched television there. John Grove, the then headmaster of the Chorister School, described his student as a shy boy with a slight stutter and a slightly rubbery face, much like he has now. He also recalled that Rowan constantly acted in plays, including George Bernard Shaw's St. Joan in 1966, when Atkinson was only 11. The audience who came to see the play was impressed by the boy's performance, though some did not see anything special in him. Other teachers noted that academically, Rowan did not show any particular promise and did not stand out among his peers. However, his math teacher, Dr. Crosby, remembered one notable incident involving Atkinson. Although, to be fair, he was not entirely sure if it was Rowan or his brother Rupert. The story known as the fire drill incident involved students having to walk through the cathedral grounds to the deanery during a fire drill. Once, during roll call, Atkinson was missing. It turned out he was peacefully sleeping in his bed. Although the teacher insisted he had checked the room last, everyone concluded that Rowan had simply gone to the bathroom and then returned to bed. Durham Chorister was a strict, traditional preparatory school that laid the foundation for a standard state education, followed by university and a career. It was located in the heart of the city but had its own playing field a few minutes away. I am afraid he made no impression on me. Atkinson, however, was not fond of sports, which explains why Dr. Crosby did not remember young Rowan. If he had been keen on rugby or cricket or athletics, I would have remembered that, the teacher noted. I am afraid he made no impression on me. It was Rowan's swarthy, unearthly appearance that stuck out more than his personality. Atkinson seemed more interested in the gardening club run by Roger Kirkham than in sports. Perhaps this was a kind of preparation for the future. After all, his older brothers were destined for business careers, while Rowan was expected to inherit the farm. Or maybe it was his way of avoiding physical exertion. Despite living only 10 miles from the school, Rowan stayed at the boarding school full-time and was allowed to go home only 4 or 5 times a term. This disciplined life taught him independence. Unlike many famous comedians who used humor as a defense mechanism from childhood, Rowan did not suffer much from bullying. Instead, he entertained his peers to make them laugh. However, it is unclear how much he needed to be persuaded to perform at impromptu early concerts and how much he craved attention. It seemed he did it mostly for his own enjoyment. He did not seek fame. He was a self-sufficient child who did not need many friends and seemed to get the most pleasure from entertaining others. At the age of 11, he earned a degree of academic distinction and received a modest scholarship of $75 a year to St. Bees, an expensive state school on the gloomy, windswept west coast of Cumbria, near the Sellafield nuclear power plant. School life was not particularly exciting for Rowan. It seemed the school did everything possible to isolate its students from popular culture. Records and music were the main sources of inspiration for the young boys. Fortunately, changes were happening in the Atkinson family that would influence his future career path. When Rowan turned 12, his parents finally bought a television. This was a fortunate time, the late 1960s, when British Broadcasting Corporation comedies were at their peak. It was during this time that the comedy series Monty Python's Flying Circus aired, becoming one of Rowan's favorite shows. By the early 1970s, he could recite many sketches from the show by heart. However, this did not make him unique, as many other kids his age loved Monty Python. But during his teenage years, uncertainty about his future profession prevailed. On one hand, he loved performing on stage, and on the other, he was fascinated by electronics and electrical engineering. Rowan was often seen in school corridors with a screwdriver in his pocket. In the theater, he often set up lighting and sound. However, while directing spotlights onto the stage, he dreamed of standing on it himself, entertaining the audience. Rowan was also a member of the St. Bees Film Society. Club members had the right to choose films for the entire school to watch, so they would lock themselves in the projection room and watch rented films over and over. It was there that he became acquainted with the work of French comedian Jacques Tati, who worked in the genre of non-verbal comedy. One of Atkinson's favorite films was Tati's Mr. Hulot's Holiday, which later inspired him to create another successful film starring himself. Any guesses which film that is? Write in the comments, and you will find out later if you are right. Let us continue. Despite his lively interest in art, his academic achievements were modest. His physics teacher said of Atkinson, "In class, he was very average. There was nothing outstanding about him. I did not expect him to become a fantastic scientist. And he was a quiet guy who went his own way." However, the same teacher remembered Rowan's school theater career more vividly, adding, "But when he was on stage, he was exceptional." And even his stutter disappeared whenever Rowan transformed into a character. Many particularly remembered his role as Mephistopheles in Faust, which Rowan masterfully played at the age of 14. As the school's headmaster, Jeffrey Lees, noted at the time, "I have seen no better performance." Before graduation, he even had a conversation with Rowan, encouraging the young man to seriously consider a career in the entertainment industry. But Atkinson himself was not yet thinking seriously about the stage. At school, Rowan was a prankster and loved to joke, which often got him into trouble with the older students. As a child, he smoked a lot, but as an adult, he quit the habit. Once, Rowan and a group of friends taught the young son of one particularly strict teacher to use profanity as revenge. Later, Rowan stated, "I never meant any harm or offense to anyone. I was just trying to enjoy myself, because, make no mistake, life is short." However, by the time he finished school in 1972, his rebellious nature slowly took a back seat, and studying and acting took up all his free time. The result was an excellent diploma, and a growing interest in mechanics and engineering. And no wonder, because despite his ability to entertain others, he was very quiet and shy, opening up only to close friends. At the same time, he loved taking apart and reassembling equipment on the farm, which also influenced his future career choice. So, following in his father's footsteps, Atkinson went on to study for a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering at Newcastle University, graduating with top grades at the age of 20. His education did not end there, and he earned a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering at the Queen's College, Oxford, and even began working on his PhD. It was then that his life began to change drastically. It was 1976 when Atkinson met and befriended two other students, philologist Richard Curtis and later musician Howard Goodall. Curtis later recalled his first impression of Rowan. He did a monologue about driving followed by the thing he does now, where he mimes and talks at the same time. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was pure genius. This friendship between the three Oxford students would last for years and lay the foundation for a creative partnership that would create more than one comedy show, including the beloved Mr. Bean, but more on that later. For now, Curtis and Atkinson joined a creative union, performing comedy sketches on stage together. While Richard handled the verbal side, Rowan was more of a visual and mime, supporting his partner's words with vivid facial expressions that made the audience laugh.
Upon the character of the king depends the plot, and so there are many different kinds of king. The benign king with a physical defect.
At first, Curtis and Atkinson performed together on stage, but over time, the performances became solo acts by Rowan, with Richard as his writer. This surprised many of their acquaintances who thought Curtis could easily have become a star himself, as he was more attractive, popular with girls, and no less talented than his colleague. But the friends decided otherwise. Some of Atkinson's most popular early pantomime sketches included a man chasing a beam of light on stage, a pianist without a piano, and a drummer without a drum set. In 1976, Curtis and Atkinson ventured to perform at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the world's largest arts festival, where anyone could participate with any type of performance. Rowan had often participated in the festival before, but this year he decided to seriously consider a career in comedy. After all, just before leaving for Edinburgh, an article came out about his latest performance, calling Atkinson the next John Cleese. Inspired by the comparison to his idol, he decided he would need an agent. So, he wrote to the agents of all his idols, inviting them to his performance in Edinburgh. Richard Armitage, the agent of none other than John Cleese, attended the festival. Several things about the young actor caught Richard's attention. First, unlike other comedians, Atkinson did not rush off the stage after his performance, so his applause lasted longer than others. Moreover, about 90% of Rowan's acting was nonverbal and undeniably funny, something his peers could not boast. Seeing potential in Rowan, Armitage soon contacted him and became his agent. In 1978, Rowan's Edinburgh show, titled Beyond a Joke, was performed at London's Hampstead Theatre. This was a huge step for Rowan. Among the audience was John Cleese himself, who later said, "He was making people laugh with some material I would have paid money to avoid." Peter Cook also saw the show, noting, "It is impossible not to be funny when you are around the man, Rowan. He is positively inspiring." Another important figure who saw the show was Humphrey Barclay, who signed a contract with Atkinson's team to create a pilot for Canned Laughter just 6 months after Rowan graduated from university. Both Canned Laughter and Beyond a Joke contained sketches that would later appear in many of Rowan's solo works and in Mr. Bean, like this one. Sound familiar?
Does he normally kiss you goodbye?
This was the first time Rowan appeared in a television series, and it was a success. It seemed the camera simply adored his silly antics, and his expressive face added novelty and humor to the show. Of course, after this, offers for other television shows should have poured in. After all, it would be foolish not to take advantage of such a distinctive face for comedic effect. However, Rowan's next project was not on television, but on radio. It was the comedy show The Atkinson People in 1978. The script was written by Curtis, and the show revolved around Rowan embarking on satirical and wry investigations into the lives of fictional great men. The radio program was well received by the audience, further cementing the young comedian's success. Another major event for Rowan occurred in 1979 when he was invited to participate in a charity event called The Secret Policeman's Ball for Amnesty International at Her Majesty's Theatre in London. The show was performed live during 4 evening performances, and the producer was none other than John Cleese. Among other sketches, John asked Atkinson to perform the school teacher sketch, which was already widely known among the audience. In it, Rowan takes attendance in an imaginary classroom.
Ainsley. Babcock. Bland.
During the performance, it seemed the audience knew all the comedians' lines, especially the funny student names, by heart. And when Atkinson called out another name, someone in the audience shouted, "Present!" Without breaking character, Rowan looked into the audience and said, "I can order you too!" In addition to his stern tone, he held his pen as if he was about to throw it at the troublemaker. The audience erupted in laughter. It was a real success! Rowan became the highlight of the event. Moreover, alongside Atkinson, many famous comedians participated, including John Cleese, Billy Connolly, Alan Bennett, and others. This also positively impacted the rising star's image. But true recognition came to Atkinson after his appearance on television in 1979 in the famous show Not the 9 O'Clock News, starring Rowan. Supporting roles were played by Mel Smith, Griff Rhys-Jones, and Australian actress Pamela Stephenson. The parody show about political news with comedy sketches had a slow start, but soon became a huge hit, winning the Silver Rose at the annual Montreux Television Festival and a British Academy of Film and Television Arts Award for the Best Light Entertainment Program.
We've heard that there are some extraordinary social habits connected with eating in your country. Is this true?
They may seem extraordinary to you, but to us, they are, how say you, small potatoes.
The show's popularity sparked nationwide controversy. Not the 9 O'Clock News was considered the funniest comedy show in years. Sometimes it even had to be moved to 9:30 p.m. due to disputes within British families. Some wanted to watch the real British Broadcasting Corporation 9 O'Clock News, while others preferred its parody version. The show solidified the team's fame and strengthened Atkinson's working relationship with Richard Curtis as they came up with more sketches, and the writers were not afraid to experiment with genres and themes. For example, one particularly successful sketch, according to many, was the simplest one, where Atkinson just walks down the street and looks at the camera. At first, the producers doubted the effectiveness of the simple scene, as there was not even a verbal joke, but its simplicity added charm, and many consider it the funniest moment in the show. But there was another side to the show's popularity. Now Rowan was a comedy star and attracted attention. He lived in London, still sharing a flat with one of his friends. In exchange for rent, he fixed the wiring in the house, and his room began to resemble a storage unit. The number of purchases grew, but there was almost no time to enjoy the new items. For example, a drum kit he bought remained in boxes for a long time, as there was neither time to play nor space in Rowan's small room. Despite his widespread recognition, Atkinson did not seek fame. Quite the opposite. He was still extremely shy and hated being the center of attention. He was comfortable only on stage or on set, pretending to be someone else. He described himself to interviewers as a performer with a comedic slant, not a comedian.
I do draw a pretty sharp line between the two, which is why interviews like this are generally quite rare things, because I think generally that people want you to be funny, so I try not to be unfunny, but I try to make up for my lack of funniness within myself by hopefully trying to be, vaguely intelligent and interesting about it. I can be funny, I think, as myself, when I'm with very good friends in small rooms.
Rowan truly disliked too much attention. "I much prefer, as a private individual, to keep my cards very close to my chest," he said. "I do not really want to be known as an individual. I want to be known for the work, not who I am or what I think." Atkinson usually kept to himself. He was rarely seen at any public events. Later, he confessed, "The rate of my success has frightened me. Fans tend to scream at me across restaurants, 'Give us a funny face, Rowan,' which I truly hate." In another interview, Atkinson also noted, "I do not recall ever consciously deciding to go into this business. One day it was just a time-consuming hobby, the next day it had become 51% of my life, and suddenly it was my job." At the same time, Rowan added, "People think because I can make them laugh on the stage, I will be able to make them laugh in person. That is not the case at all. I am essentially a rather quiet, dull person, who just happens to be a performer." His colleagues also repeatedly pointed out that Rowan is not your typical showbiz star. For example, his colleague Stephen Fry noted, "Rowan has not an ounce of showbiz in him. It is as if God had an extra jar of comic talent and, for a joke, gave it to a nerdy, anorak-wearing northern chemist." However, Atkinson still enjoyed working on small projects, especially performing on stage. In November 1980, he appeared before the Queen at the Royal Variety Performance, and in December, he was appointed to the board of directors of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society. His television popularity led to his own show at the Hampstead Theatre titled Rowan Atkinson in Review, with tickets sold out 3 months in advance. One of his popular characters at the time was Toby the Devil, who meets various sinners in hell. Some of the jokes from that sketch could easily get him canceled today.
The French, are you here? If you'd just like to come down here with the Germans, that'd be lovely. I'm sure you'll have plenty to talk about.
Both audiences and critics were delighted with the young comedy star in his show. Ian Christie from the Daily Express wrote, "Rowan Atkinson is both witty and original, a combination that is hard to beat." Robert Cushman from The Observer agreed, adding, "If there is a funnier act around than this one, I would like it brought to me, now." So it is no surprise that after such reviews in the press and sold-out shows, Atkinson was named Show Business Personality of the Year by the Royal Variety Club, and the Society of West End Theatres recognized Rowan as Comedy Performer of the Year. It was then that the idea for a sketch about a man on the beach trying to change his trousers into swimwear came about. A decade later, this sketch would become part of the mega-popular show Mr. Bean and join the collection of other unforgettable scenes from the series. For now, Atkinson began acting in lesser-known films, such as playing the lead role in the short film Dead on Time. In the film, his character learns that he has only half an hour left to live and frantically tries to squeeze the rest of his life into that short period to avoid any regrets. Rowan could also be seen in two other short films produced by John Reese, Mr. Kershaw's Dream System and Oh What the Hell. The actor also began paving his way to big cinema, appearing in a cameo role in the 1983 James Bond film Never Say Never Again. His character, Mr. Small Fawcett, is a representative of the British Embassy in Nassau, who constantly interrupts Bond while he is busy with missions or chatting with women. This cameo role also contributed to his recognition among the general public.
Sorry I'm late. But as you're one of these undercover Johnnies, I took a precaution of not being followed.
And that's why you shouted my name across the harbor.
Oh, God, did I? Oh, I'm sorry.
Even before Not the 9 O'Clock News aired, BVS producers wanted to create a sitcom featuring Curtis and Atkinson. The duo, in turn, sought an idea that would make the show funny and appeal to a wide audience. At the same time, it had to be something new, unlike anything previously shown on television. Then they came across the Hitler Diaries, which were published in 1981 in the Sunday Times. These documents shed a completely different light on German history and showed the Führer from another perspective. This gave Curtis and Atkinson the idea. What if they created a series about an alternate history of Great Britain? Thus, the WVS historical comedy series Blackadder was born.
The Blackadder is a recurring character in history. We wrote a sitcom in which, over 4 series, you see him in 4 different eras of British history. The essence of the Blackadder, it's about hierarchy. There's, either it's the royal court or it's the army, which has a very, definable, levels of status. Effectively, in every subsequent series, I play, the ancestor, the descendant of the person in the previous series.
In the first season, Atkinson's character is a prince, in the second, a lord, in the third, a servant, and in the fourth, a captain in the British Army during World War I. The actor himself described his characters as follows. In the first series, he was a bit more of an idiot. In the second, third, and fourth series, he is a cleverer man sort of stuck in the middle of a hierarchy. He would love to move up, but he finds it very, very difficult to do so, and he certainly does not want to move down towards his sidekick, Baldric. Indeed, Atkinson's characters are middle-tier guys. He looks down on those above him in the social hierarchy as well as those below him. He had a wonderful sort of weary cynicism about the world, and that, I think, is what made him surprisingly identifiable and also made him funny. From the very beginning, Curtis and Atkinson avoided addressing the audience directly. They called their project a situational tragedy and approached the work as if they were filming a serious period drama. Similarly, they did not resort to cheap anachronisms or references to modern events for the sake of laughs. However, they never aimed for historical accuracy. The first season is set in medieval England during the reigns of Richard III and Richard IV. Rowan plays Edmund, Duke of Edinburgh, next in line to the English throne after Richard IV.
Come a toast. Let all those who go to don armor tomorrow remember to go before they don armor tomorrow.
The show's success came gradually. Its popularity was largely influenced by the pilot episode, which was created to promote the project. In it, the main character Edmund was more of a schemer than a fool. The cast was also slightly different, including characters like Baldric, Edmund's servant, and his father. Additionally, the large-scale filming on location and the gloomy atmosphere of medieval England did not make the show easy to digest, despite its crude and sarcastic humor. By the way, filming took place in a real castle, Alnwick Castle on the coast of Northumberland. It was later used for the historical drama Elizabeth and the adventure film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. The castle was not empty, as the 12th Duke of Northumberland and his wife lived there at the time of filming and had to move to another part of the castle during production. Due to the location, it was impossible to invite a live audience, so the creators did not have real-time reactions from viewers. As Atkinson himself noted, the action got in the way of the humor. So it is no surprise that critics were harsh on Blackadder, and even the creators were dissatisfied with the result. During the break between the first and second seasons, Atkinson returned to the stage to star in Larry Shue's comedy The Nerd at the Old Vic Theatre. The play, in which Rowan played the titular nerd Rick, an egotistical and carefree character who ruins the life of an ordinary family, received mixed reviews. Interestingly, critics were harsher on Larry Shue's script than on Rowan's performance. In the Express on Sunday, Clive Hirschhorn wrote, "His highly individual brand of humor comes to the rescue of this trite little farce." Meanwhile, Francis King from the Sunday Telegraph noted that, at 140 minutes, the play was about 100 minutes longer than necessary, but added that the role was tailor-made for Atkinson. And no wonder, as some traits of the nerd, his spontaneity and egotism, could later be seen in the audience's favorite. At the same time, Atkinson continued to battle his inner demons, which were eating away at him. Being funny is agony. The longer I spend in the business, the more depressed and uncertain I get. I worry about everything, honestly, every single thing. If an audience laughs, then I worry in case it is only half of them laughing. The actor was stressed on set. His innate perfectionism made it difficult for him to relax during filming. You know, a lot of people promote perfectionism as if it were an admirable quality, Rowan noted, whereas I think it can be quite corrosive. It can actually be quite a negative thing. In his case, this trait meant constant dissatisfaction with his work, and the filming process itself brought him no joy. When asked if he was satisfied with the final result of his efforts, Atkinson invariably replied, "You know, for me, the glass is always half empty, you will not be surprised to hear." Gradually, each new interview became more difficult for the actor, and he found joy in a rather eccentric hobby. He was passionate about Formula One and Aston Martin cars. In 1985, Prince Charles, a fan of the actor's work and a fellow enthusiast of the same car brand, visited him. At the time, Rowan was awaiting the delivery of a Vantage Zagato, one of only 50 ever made. It was such a rare car that in the summer, Atkinson allowed Aston Martin to display it at a car show. Its value skyrocketed in the following years. The actor paid £87,000 for it, and by 1990, it was valued at $300,000. On January 6, 1985, Rowan celebrated his 30th birthday. It was a year of change, a year of leaving the past behind and setting a course for the future. By then, neither of his parents planned to hand over the management of the farm to their youngest son, who was building a career in show business. So Eric sold the farm, which was later turned into a hotel, and less than a year later, he passed away. Although a few months before his death, he managed to attend a screening of Never Say Never Again, in which Rowan had a cameo role at the Empire Cinema in Consett, which once belonged to his father. After all the upheavals, Atkinson returned to filming the second season of Blackadder, which was released in 1986. This time, the creators revised their approach, taking previous mistakes into account, and decided to change the entire production process. Much funnier and much cheaper. First, Ben Elton replaced Atkinson as the lead writer, and he would later write sketches for Mr. Bean. His comedic style proved useful and revitalized the creative process. Another friend of Atkinson's, composer Howard Goodall, also became actively involved in the second season, creating final songs for each episode based on the scripts. Additionally, the filming location changed. The big changes between the first series and the second series were that we went from a very extravagant, location-based, semi-film-like texture to something we just had to make much more effective, much funnier, and much cheaper. It was decided to film on only 3 sets, with the action moving between them. The events of the second season take place at the court of Queen Elizabeth. The characters in this season are descendants of the original characters from the first season. Rowan Atkinson plays the role of Edmund Blackadder's great-grandson, and Miranda Richardson stars as Queen Elizabeth. Stephen Fry and Patsy Byrne also appear in this season. All these factors, along with the talented performances of the actors, contributed to the much greater success and popularity of the second season.
I have 2 beans, then I add 2 more beans. What does that make?
A very small casserole.
Not resting on his laurels, Atkinson finally agreed to try his hand at Broadway, though he had previously turned down any offers to do so. It was a big step for Rowan, and in one interview he even admitted, "I know that it is a potential graveyard for English comics. It is something I must plan very carefully, and I hope they turn out to see me. Preparing for the show, he gave several small concerts in Canada, performing in Montreal for an audience of 500. The audience warmly welcomed the Englishman. However, there was an incident. While traveling in someone's car at 70 miles per hour, he got into an accident. According to Atkinson, he simply handed the driver a cube of chocolate, which action instigated the unfortunate chain of events. The car flipped 3 times in the air. But fortunately, Rowan was wearing a seatbelt and escaped with minor injuries. This was not the first car incident involving the actor. 2 years earlier, he had driven his Aston Martin off the road, severely damaging the car but escaping serious injury. And 2 years after that, he would be fined £150 and banned from driving for 2 weeks for speeding at 114 miles per hour. Atkinson had long harbored ambitions to participate in motorsports on a quasi-professional level, and at Brands Hatch, he drove a Renault on the track. But racing remained an unfulfilled dream. A couple of years later, he competed in the Renault 5 Turbo Championship. So it's safe to say that cars, like comedy, were one of Atkinson's true passions. But let's return to Broadway. At the time, the comedian was seriously preparing for his performance. In addition to his Canadian shows, Rowan also helped launch Comic Relief, broadcast from a refugee camp in Sudan, and performed alongside other comedians at a London theater. His Broadway show, aptly titled Rowan Atkinson at the Atkinson, took place in October 1986. Although Atkinson had participated in numerous stand-up shows and tested new material on British audiences beforehand, nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. Some critics tore into the actor and his performance mercilessly. Frank Rich of the New York Times wrote that Rowan Atkinson was a Broadway butcher, and that the blending of English and American cultures is not yet complete. After the scathing reviews, the show closed after just 14 performances. Despite plenty of positive reviews, Rowan was deeply upset by the outcome and only felt relief once he was back home in England. However, Frank Rich didn't stop criticizing British humor, adding, "As long as the British public retains its affection for lavatorial humor, there will always be an England." Mr. Atkinson is very fond of toilet jokes, and he is very popular in England. Not everyone shared his opinion, including the writers of Newsday, who said Rowan brings us a brand of British humor that travels well. Atkinson himself responded to Rich's remarks, "Maybe he has some strange complex of his own about being lavatorial, and he wasn't going to swallow it." To distract himself from this unpleasant experience, Atkinson embarked on a 3-month live tour across the UK before returning to create the 3rd season of Blackadder, with writers Ben Elton and Richard Curtis. The cast also included Tony Robinson and Hugh Laurie, better known to audiences as House. This time, the series was set in the court of the Prince Regent in the 1790s. Instead of noble blood, Edmund Blackadder was now the butler of a not-too-bright prince. And of course, Baldric remained his ever-loyal sidekick.
We are going to go to Mrs. Miggins. We're going to find out where Dr. Johnson keeps a copy of that dictionary, and then you are going to steal it.
The show premiered in 1987 and became a hit. The following year, a special episode titled Blackadder's Christmas Carol aired, bringing all the stars together in a parody of Dickens' classic tale. After the undeniable success of the 3rd season, Atkinson began to wonder whether to continue. As I get satisfied with a project and feel that I want to leave it, the public response seems to always want more. So, heeding the audience's wishes, the creators decided to produce a 4th and final season. Released in November 1989, Blackadder Goes Forth was as different from its predecessors as night and day. Despite the usual humor, the setting was the trenches of World War I. Atkinson played Captain Edmund Blackadder on the Western Front in 1917. The series took on a serious tone, and the finale of the 6th and final episode left viewers not with smiles, but with tears in their eyes.
Not even our generals are mad enough to shell their own men. They think it's far more sporting to let the Germans do it.
In 1990, the show was named Best Comedy Series of the Year. Naturally, talks of a 5th season emerged, and for a while, the idea was discussed. The script would have revolved around a 1960s pop group, with Atkinson as their manager and Baldric as a bald drummer named Rick. However, both Rowan and the writers were busy with other projects, and no one was eager to dedicate another year to producing a new season. Thus, Blackadder 5 remained just an idea. After the series ended, Atkinson had no intention of resting on his laurels. Eager to take on more serious and less lavatorial roles, Rowan starred alongside Jeff Goldblum and Emma Thompson in The Tall Guy, written by Richard Curtis.
It's a semi-autobiographical film, I suppose, which Richard has written, and I feature in it because I've always featured in his life a lot, because he writes most of what I do, and I play a character called Rowan Atkinson, who's a complete and utter bastard. So, and the problem, it's very difficult when someone presents you with a script in which you are a complete and utter bastard, and you're told that it's based on you.
Do you think he's trying to tell you?
Well, yes. Well, whatever he's trying to say. The important thing is you mustn't let anyone else play that part.
Interestingly, it was in this film that Atkinson first swore on screen, uttering the infamous English word starting with F. The film received an 85% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 20 reviews, with an average score of 6.7 out of 10. Worldwide, it grossed $5 million. Atkinson also appeared in the low-budget short film The Appointments of Dennis Jennings with Stephen Wright, playing an unethical psychiatrist treating an introverted patient with multiple mental disorders. Their troubled relationship and tragic ending became the film's central theme. The short went on to win an Oscar for Best Live-Action Short Film. He also tried his hand at classic literature, playing the hotel manager in the Warner Brothers adaptation of Roald Dahl's The Witches. Theater remained close to his heart, and he participated in a production of Chekhov's short plays titled The Sneeze, alongside Timothy West and Cheryl Campbell. As the creative director, he also acted in 6 of the 7 plays. The title was inspired by one of his old sketches from Not the 9 O'Clock News, where he played a pizza chef who sneezes into a pizza but serves it anyway. Despite the humorous title, the plays were dramatic, and Atkinson once again proved he was more than just a funny face. Critics praised his performance. In 1990, Rowan's personal life also saw changes. He married his girlfriend, Sunetra Sastry. The couple had met in 1986 when Sunetra worked as a makeup artist for his Blackadder co-star, Stephen Fry. The moment Rowan saw her on set, he was smitten. He even asked Fry to switch makeup artists so he could get to know her better, and Fry agreed. Their connection was instant, and they soon began dating. Rumors say their first date was at a restaurant where Rowan spent the first 15 minutes silently staring at her before finally speaking, only to ask for ketchup. Regardless, 3 years later, in 1989, he proposed, and Sunetra was overjoyed. They married the following February in a quiet ceremony at New York's famous Russian tea room. Stephen Fry served as best man. Back in London, Atkinson introduced his wife to the public when he accepted his Showbiz Personality of the Year award at the Hilton. I was asked in my first term at Oxford to do a sketch in this one-night show at the Oxford Playhouse. I'm not really naturally a writer, so I just stood in front of the mirror and started to mess about with my face. And this strange, surreal, sort of non-speaking character evolved. In 1989, a business meeting laid the foundation for Atkinson's iconic character, Mr. Bean. Present at the meeting were Atkinson himself, his new agent Peter Bennett Jones, Thames Television International Director Mike Phillips, and producer Catherine Senior. They discussed a pilot episode titled Mr. Bean. The character had first appeared on stage a decade earlier in 2 sketches, the beach-changing scene, and a churchgoer struggling to stay awake during a service. Both sketches were included in the pilot. Interestingly, Bean's surname could have been entirely different.
And we had to give him a name in order to give the television show a name. So we came up with the name of Mr. Bean. We were thinking Mr. White for a while. That was an idea, but that sounded a bit dull. We thought of, vegetables, and Mr. Bean seemed to be short, sharp, and to the point.
The pilot aired on January 1st, 1990, and exceeded all expectations. The first episode of Mr. Bean drew around 13 million viewers. From the moment it launched, the show became a global phenomenon. The series stood out from other TV shows for several reasons. First, over 5 years, only 14 episodes were produced, each about 30 minutes long, with no overarching plot, just a collection of sketches from the daily life of one peculiar character. The idea was to keep Mr. Bean special, ensuring he didn't lose his charm.
Good morning. Name, please.
B. Curtis initially tested sketch ideas at home in front of a mirror before sharing them. Some ideas came from Atkinson himself. For example, the scene where Bean brushes his teeth while driving wasn't fictional. Rowan had often seen drivers doing absurd things behind the wheel. According to producer Catherine Senior, key to the success has been to keep the incredible distinctive humor at its core. The everyday situations which Mr. Bean creates are relevant to all types of people who can identify with his silly antics. Additionally, the protagonist rarely spoke, relying on facial expressions and gestures, a factor that contributed to the show's international appeal, as no translation was needed. Alongside Bean, other silent characters became iconic, including Teddy the Bear, the Yellow Minnie, and the Blue Reliant Regal that always seemed to challenge him. Most of the stunts were performed by Atkinson himself. In those days, we tended to do things for real because it was cheaper, and CGI didn't really exist at the level it does now. I mean, certainly the wider shots, he recalled. However, some scenes were dangerous, like filming Bean on the roof of his Mini. I remember we wanted the shot of the car coming straight towards the camera. The cameraman was here, and I just drove straight at him. You'd never do that today. I stopped before hitting him, but what if I hadn't? Or if the brakes failed? That kind of thing isn't allowed anymore. Interestingly, the series finale could have been completely different. In the original ending, Bean was supposed to drive recklessly down a country road, only to witness a UFO landing in a field. He would stop to investigate.
That he's driving along a country lane extremely fast in his Mini, and he sees this spaceship landing in a field, and he stops the car and he looks out and he thinks, what's that spaceship doing there? And he drives into the field with his Mini and he stops outside the spaceship. And he looks around and he looks up and suddenly the door goes... and this bright light comes out of the spaceship. And Mr. Bean walks out of the spaceship.
Of course.
And then another Mr. Bean walks out of the spaceship. And he sees Mr. Bean and they all shake hands.
The idea was scrapped, but years later, it was included in the animated spin-off. The scripts by Curtis, Elton, and later Robin Driscoll, combined with Howard Goodall's music and Atkinson's unparalleled performance, turned Mr. Bean into a British cultural icon and one of the world's most beloved comedy characters. What made this strange, cartoonish man so special? Atkinson once described him as a natural anarchist. But at the same time, Mr. Bean is a very self-contained character because he's so introspective, selfish, and self-centered that there's no need for another person in the scene to make him funny. However, Atkinson himself doesn't relate much to the character, calling him very odd, very tiny, self-regarding, narcissistic.
Enjoyed playing Mr. Bean the most because he's a character who's furthest away from my own character. As a person, I don't like him at all. I think he's very odd and pretty weird and not very nice.
Instead, he notes, what's fun about it is the escape. When you play the character, you don't care what you do. It's a weird kind of release. When asked why the show became a global phenomenon, Atkinson speculated, Mr. Bean is essentially a child trapped in a man's body. All cultures identify with children similarly, so he has this bizarre global outreach. 10-year-old boys from different cultures have more in common than 30-year-olds. As we grow up, we acquire sensibilities that divide us. Critics and audiences agreed that Mr. Bean was special. Surveys showed its audience ranged from ages 4 to 100. However, not everyone loved it, particularly fans of Blackadder who were unimpressed by the stark contrast in Atkinson's roles. Others displeased were people with the surname Bean, who sent angry letters complaining that the show had made their name embarrassing. Despite some backlash, the series became a mega hit, and in 1990, Atkinson won a BAFTA for Best Light Entertainment Performer and BBC Personality of the Year. Blackadder Goes Forth was named Best Comedy Show of the Year. Not content to stop there, Atkinson and Robin Driscoll published Mr. Bean's Diary, which became a fan favorite. Next, Bean was brought to the big screen. The 1997 film Bean was seen by millions in theaters. Curtis and Driscoll wrote the script, Goodall composed the music, and Mel Smith, who had worked with Atkinson before, directed. Interestingly, 2 alternate versions were made for different markets, one for the US and another for the rest of the world. The difference? A turkey scene. In the US cut, Bean wears it on his head. Elsewhere, he microwaves it until it explodes. Atkinson explained this was due to test audience reactions. The film was a box office success, grossing over $250 million worldwide.
He's a genius, huh?
That's what they tell me.
Critics, however, were less enthusiastic. On Rotten Tomatoes, it holds a 43% approval rating based on 35 reviews, averaging 5.3 out of 10. The consensus reads, Bean boasts a terrifically talented physical comedian in the title role, but his constant mugging and silly slapstick quickly wear thin. Metacritic gave it 52 out of 100, indicating mixed or average reviews. Roger Ebert awarded it 2.5 out of 4 stars, praising its funny moments but criticizing its 90-minute runtime as excessive. Yet, the creators weren't deterred. In February 2001, plans for a second film were announced. The original script had Bean traveling to Australia under the working title Down Under Bean. By 2005, no updates had been made. Instead, in 2002, an animated series titled Mr. Bean, the animated series premiered, featuring familiar characters like Teddy, Irma Gobb, the Minnie, and the Blue Reliant Regal. New additions included Mrs. Wicket, Bean's grumpy landlady, her cat Scrapper, and her friend Miss Wince. Atkinson voiced Bean, and the show was well received.
Oh my goodness!
Finally, in March 2005, Bean 2 was officially announced. However, since most filming took place in France and the plot revolved around a trip to the Cannes Film Festival, the title was changed first to French Bean, then to Mr. Bean's Holiday, a nod to Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday mentioned earlier in the video. Atkinson said that despite the long time since he last played Mr. Bean, he had no problems returning to the character. At the same time, filming for this movie, according to the actor himself, was the most exhausting of his entire career, and all because of the scene in Provence, where Mr. Bean seemingly effortlessly overtakes cyclists on his bicycle.
I didn't overtake them with great ease. I had to put in a tremendous amount of effort, and once we'd done a couple of takes of that, I was absolutely dead, because I'm not a cyclist, I'm not fit, I'm not an athlete. They cycled very slowly to make sure that I overtook them.
Mr. Bean's Holiday became the official film for Red Nose Day 2007, with the money earned from the film going to the comic relief charity telethon. Before the film's release, a new exclusive Mr. Bean sketch, titled Mr. Bean's Wedding, aired during the comic relief telethon on BBC One on March 16, 2007. The official premiere of the film helped raise money for both Comic Relief and Oxford Children's Hospital. In November 2006, Universal Pictures released a teaser trailer for the film, and the following month launched the official website. Having grossed over $230 million worldwide, the film was a commercial success, considering its $25 million budget. Critics, however, remained true to themselves and wrote mixed reviews about the film. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 51% based on 115 reviews, with an average rating of 5.40 out of 10. On Metacritic, film got 56 points out of 100, getting mixed or average reviews. And audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B on a scale from A+ to F. Beyond the big screen, Mr. Bean frequently appeared in commercials. He could be seen on TV in ads for Fujifilm photographic film, M&M's chocolate candies, and Snickers bars.
John, your turn.
Moreover, when London hosted the 2012 Summer Olympics, Mr. Bean was present at the opening ceremony, where he kicked off the games by performing Chariots of Fire. In an interview with The Telegraph in November 2012, Atkinson admitted that Mr. Bean's time was coming to an end. The stuff that has been most commercially successful for me, basically quite physical, quite childish, I increasingly feel I'm going to do a lot less of, Atkinson said. Apart from the fact that your physical ability starts to decline, I also think someone in their 50s being childlike becomes a little sad. You've got to be careful. However, never say never. First, in 2014, it was announced that the animated series Mr. Bean the Animated Series would continue, with Atkinson returning to voice his most famous character. The show came out already next year and ended after 5th season in 2019. Additionally, on March 13, 2015, a brand new Mr. Bean sketch, The Funeral, premiered in honor of Comic Relief and to celebrate Mr. Bean's 25th anniversary. When earlier that year, during a radio interview, executive producer Peter Bennett Jones was asked about Mr. Bean's enduring appeal, he replied, "I don't think anyone could have anticipated quite how successful and long-lived it would be. Coming up to 25 years is an extraordinary thought since we first went on air on January 1st, 1990. Mr. Bean's been very good to us all, so we love Mr. Bean. And even now, the popularity of this character hasn't faded. Mr. Bean, for example, became one of the voices of the World Health Organization, giving important health advice. Additionally, Mr. Bean is a mega-popular public figure. After all, he has amassed over 30 million subscribers across 3 YouTube channels with over 11 billion views. The trend extends to numerous platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok, where Mr. Bean's presence has grown over the past year, showing that younger audiences continue to engage with him. Mr. Bean is also the #1 television brand on Facebook worldwide, with 98 million fans, surpassing Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, Harry Potter, and others. Overall, Mr. Bean has over 137 million followers worldwide, and this number continues to grow. Meanwhile, the actor himself isn't rushing to register on social media.
Yeah, I tend to keep myself to myself a lot. I'm not on social media in any shape or form. I prefer to keep all my activities of a personal level, personal and private, just because I find it much more relaxing. I find the whole concept of social media just not
keeping up with it,
sort of
right?
unrelaxing. Yeah. It feels like an unrelaxing thing, so I don't do it.
And fans of the animated series about their favorite character can rejoice, as it was recently announced that Mr. Bean's adventures would continue, with viewers able to see them next year on their TV screens. Despite being associated with Mr. Bean, Rowan didn't limit his life and work to just filming projects related to this character. Starting in the 90s, Atkinson not only played supporting roles in several dozen famous and successful films, but also gave us several new and unforgettable images. back in 1991, he surprised many by creating his own documentary about cars called The Driven Man. There, Atkinson drives around London, trying to rid himself of his obsession with cars, discussing it with taxi drivers, police officers, used car salesmen, and psychotherapists. As he himself noted, this film is about guilt. In this cinematic confession, Atkinson tried to reveal the contradictions between his genuine love for cars and the awareness of the harm they cause both to the environment and directly to people themselves. Cars in general are a big part of the actor's life. For example, Rowan appeared as racer Henry Birkin in the TV show Full Throttle in 1995. Atkinson also participated in races with other cars, including a Renault 5 GT Turbo for 2 seasons in this series. From 1997 to 2015, he owned a rare McLaren F1, which was involved in an accident in Cabus near Garstang, Lancashire in October 1999. And car incidents in the actor's life didn't end there. In July 2001, Atkinson crashed an Aston Martin V8 Zagato at an enthusiast meet but walked away unharmed. This happened during a competition at the Aston Martin Owners Club at Croft Racing Circuit, Darlington. By the way, that same year, Atkinson nearly died during a vacation in Kenya in a plane accident. The thing is, the pilot of his private plane passed out. The actor managed to keep the plane airborne until the pilot regained consciousness and was able to land at Wilson Airport in Nairobi. There was another serious accident in August 2011 when his car caught fire after Atkinson lost control and hit a tree. This accident caused significant damage to the vehicle. Repairs took over a year, resulting in the largest insurance payout in Britain, amounting to £910,000. Previously, the star owned a Honda NSX, Audi A8, Skoda Superb, and Honda Civic Hybrid. The only car Atkinson would never buy, according to him, is a Porsche. I have a problem with Porsches. They're wonderful cars, but I know I could never live with one. Somehow the typical Porsche people, and I wish them no ill, are not, I feel, my kind of people. But let's return to other aspects of the star's life. Rowan's family was slowly growing. In 1993, the couple's first child, Benjamin, was born, followed 2 years later by a daughter, whom the parents named Lily. Rowan and Sunetra were extremely happy with their new roles as parents. Around the same time, Sastry decided to leave her professional work as a makeup artist to devote all her time to the children and family. She also wanted to support her husband in his rising career, and believed it would be easier if she stayed at home. And the actor's career was indeed gaining momentum. In 1993, he appeared in the comedy Hot Shots, Part 2, starring Charlie Sheen. It was a parody of the successful action movie Rambo. And Rowan played Dexter Heyman, a prisoner in Iraq whom the main character goes to rescue. The film was financially successful at the box office, grossing over $130 million worldwide. The following year, he donned the robes of a clergyman, portraying Father Gerald in the famous comedy written by his friend Richard Curtis, 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Atkinson himself described his character as a very young, virtually untrained kuras, who was attempting to host a marriage service, adding that he's someone who's not as good as he thinks he is. Interestingly, it was Curtis's own experience that inspired him to write the script for this film. According to the screenwriter, he began writing the script at the age of 34 after realizing he had attended 65 weddings in 11 years. At one wedding, another guest proposed to him, but he refused and always regretted it. So this situation became the basis for the film's plot. The film received positive reviews from critics and grossed over $245 million worldwide, providing the highest profit percentage relative to cost among films released in 1994. That same year, Atkinson voiced the character Zazu in Disney's iconic animated film, The Lion King. Interestingly, Rowan initially didn't want to participate in the project, considering himself more of a visual actor, and thus finding the idea pointless. However, thanks to an old acquaintance, Atkinson changed his mind.
But the co-writer of the Mr. Bean series, Robin Driscoll, I said, I've been offered this part in a Disney movie called The Lion King. I said, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to do it. And he said, oh, go on, it's Disney.
Yes.
You know, you may as well. And then, you know, I didn't realize that it would turn into the really very special film.
Needless to say, how successful the cartoon turned out to be and how many fans it has worldwide, we think Rowan didn't regret being part of such a large-scale project. In 1995, the actor reunited with Ben Elton and filmed the British sitcom The Thin Blue Line, about a police station led by Inspector Fowler, which aired until the end of the following year. The series was popular with viewers, though it received some criticism for inconsistent character development and too broad a storyline. However, the show ultimately ranked 34th in a poll for Britain's best sitcom. Atkinson and Elton's collaboration didn't end there. And after filming the full-length Mr. Bean in 2000, Rowan appeared in a supporting role in the comedy Maybe Baby, starring his longtime friend, Hugh Laurie. Although critics weren't particularly thrilled with the film, British audiences enjoyed watching it on the big screen. A more vivid supporting role for Atkinson was that of Enrico Pollini, a simple-minded, narcoleptic Italian tourist from Naples, in Jerry Zucker's comedy Rat Race. According to the script, a dozen people participate in a peculiar race for a huge sum of money, while an eccentric millionaire and his friends place bets on them. Filming took place in Nevada, near Vegas, so the actors had the chance not only to work, but also to try their luck in numerous casinos. However, unlike the others, Atkinson didn't take advantage of this opportunity. Instead, he booked a room in the only hotel in Vegas whose lobby didn't have slot machines. The actor noted that it was a fantastic little oasis in the madness of Vegas. The filming itself brought Atkinson immense pleasure, as did portraying his character, whom he called one of the nicest people that I've ever played. I think he's a genuinely well-meaning, good-hearted bloke. He's the only one of all the racers who doesn't care about the money. He's the only one who's just in it for a bit of fun. Although the comedy received mixed reviews from critics, it still recouped its $48 million budget, earning over $85.5 million worldwide.
Wait, what is that?
He's a needle.
Will you please put it in the bag?
Before starting work on another popular franchise, Johnny English, Atkinson appeared in another supporting role in 2002, Mondavarious, in the commercially successful film Scooby-Doo, based on the animated series of the same name. Then he was absorbed by a new role, the James Bond parody, Agent Johnny English, a character that has become iconic, a British spy whose self-esteem doesn't match his actual abilities and whose ambitions always exceed his skill.
Should I come in through the window? Possibly. Should I drop down from the ceiling? Perhaps.
Actually, sir,
if there's one thing I think we can be fairly confident about, that is that they didn't come up through the...
According to the actor, Johnny is a relatively rare character because he was originally named Richard Latham and was part of some commercials Atkinson and company filmed for Barclaycard in the 90s.
It's a bit of a no-brainer to say, well, actually, why don't we just make a feature film? When we try and think of a name for the movies, I like sort of, the name of the character in there, like Mr. Bean. And so in trying to think of a name, we thought Richard Latham was a bit dull, but Johnny English had a certain...
The character Boff was also taken from these ads, though he was played by a different actor, Henry Naylor. Some jokes from the commercials made it into the film, like when English misidentifies a waiter or accidentally shoots a tranquilizer pen. Filming lasted 14 weeks and took place at Shepperton Studios in London and St. Albans, plus 2 days in Monte Carlo to finish the final scene. Interestingly, Atkinson performed most of the stunts himself, at least the ones the crew allowed, including driving the car. By the way, the Aston Martin Johnny English drives was actually Atkinson's own car. He genuinely enjoyed filming the extreme scenes. However, the most unpleasant scene for the star was when he had to swing down a rope trying to steal the crown from John Malkovich's character. According to Atkinson, there were countless takes. I hated every single one of them. I must have done it 25 times, this swinging on a big roll. Despite the interesting plot and comedic elements, critics weren't impressed. Reviews were mostly negative or mixed. Even now, on Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a 33% approval rating based on 122 reviews with an average rating of 4.9 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, "A tame spy spoof that elicits infrequent chuckles." Atkinson didn't expect such criticism of his beloved character. I remember looking up Johnny English in a film guide and it said intermittently hilarious. Quite a good description of 5 good jokes and a lot of longueurs. I find it frustrating that, apart from 4 weddings and a funeral, I have yet to be involved in a film of which I am totally proud. At the same time, Atkinson's opinion about the character himself was far from admiration. He called him just a fairly two-dimensional, self-obsessed individual who doesn't really show any kindness or empathy. But it was precisely this that the actor saw as the film's comedic element. He's good, but crucially, and this is where the comedy comes in, he's not as good as he thinks he is, the actor noted. Be that as it may, despite mixed reviews, the film was a commercial success, grossing $160 million worldwide against a $40 million budget. Atkinson didn't stay idle for long, as that same year, 2003, he appeared in his friend Richard Curtis's Christmas comedy Love Actually. Interestingly, the film was rushed to release by Christmas, so the filming and post-production process was chaotic. No wonder in the scene where Atkinson's character Rufus annoys Harry, Alan Rickman's reaction was genuine, as he was driven crazy by the time constraints. Still, thanks to the star-studded cast and engaging stories, the film became a holiday classic and a must-watch during Christmas. After appearing in the black comedy Keeping Mum in one of the lead roles and filming Mr. Bean's Holiday, Atkinson returned to theater. In 2009, he appeared as Fagin in the musical Oliver, based on Charles Dickens's 1838 novel Oliver Twist. His character is a cunning professional criminal who takes in homeless boys and teaches them to pick pockets. For this role, Atkinson was nominated for a Laurence Olivier Award for Best Actor in a Musical and won the What's on Stage Award in the same category. 2 years later, the second installment about Agent Johnny English, titled Johnny English Reborn, was released, grossing over $160 million and receiving middling reviews from critics. Atkinson also appeared as a guest star on Top Gear. There, the actor drove a Kia Ceed around the track in 1 minute 42.2 seconds, securing him first place on the leaderboard at the time. Later, only Matt LeBlanc, known for his role as Joey in Friends, set a faster time.
And wide on the way out as well, looking smooth.
2013 was a special year for Atkinson. First, the actor was awarded the title of Commander of the Order of the British Empire for his contributions to drama and charity. Second, Rowan appeared on stage again, this time in Simon Gray's Quatermain's Terms. He approached the role with full seriousness, noting, "It's well known that tragedy and comedy are close bedfellows. It's rare, though, that you see them placed in such intimacy." About his character, the star remarked, "Like most tragic figures, Quatermain is unaware of his own tragedy. What I love about him is his optimism. You don't tend to feel much sympathy for pessimistic people. But those who retain their optimism, despite the sadness of their lives, are interesting, engaging, and sympathetic." But, oddly enough, it wasn't the actor's performance that drew public attention to this play. The reason was meeting the person who would put an end to the Atkinson couple's quiet and peaceful life. Because it was then that Rowan met his co-star, Louise Ford. At the time, Louise was about 32, making her 26 years younger than Atkinson. Moreover, she was in a relationship with another comedian, James Acaster. Despite both actors being committed to other people, Rowan and Louise grew very close during the play. Atkinson realized he was in love, so he faced a decision: follow his heart and leave his family, or remain a model family man. Although we don't know what happened behind closed doors, it's safe to assume Atkinson either confessed the affair to his wife or she found out on her own. Either way, Sunetra was undoubtedly heartbroken that her husband had fallen for someone else. She wasn't about to put up with her husband's infidelity and filed for divorce in 2014, citing his unreasonable behavior as the reason. The divorce papers didn't specify what unreasonable behavior allowed Sunetra to divorce so quickly. The couple divorced the following year. The divorce proceedings lasted just 65 seconds, as Atkinson didn't even attend the court hearing. So, it was official. Rowan and Sunetra were no longer married. However, the woman didn't leave the marriage empty-handed. She received a $10 million mansion from her ex-husband as part of the divorce settlement. Rowan, on the other hand, moved into his £4 million London cottage. Though the former couple never publicly commented on this romance, when the actor began openly dating Louise soon after the divorce, it confirmed the rumors. Sunetra was deeply upset to be replaced by such a younger woman, a source told The Sun. The actor's affair and subsequent divorce were harshly criticized by British tabloids. Rowan had built his career as seemingly an innocent comedian and family man, so when fans learned he'd left his family for another woman, it changed their perception of their idol. And it wasn't just fans who saw the actor in a new light. His own daughter Lily shared her thoughts about her parents' divorce on social media. She described his behavior as a sneaky move, referring to how her father began publicly displaying his new relationship immediately after the divorce. It was clear Lily was incredibly angry and disappointed with her father for his actions, continuing to call him scum. Lily decided not to use her father's surname and took her mother's maiden name, Sastry. Their son Benjamin wasn't thrilled about the family changes either and shared that he had absolutely no interest in an acting career. Instead, he became an equestrian coach. However, Lily chose to follow in her father's footsteps and works as an actress, known for her roles in films like Johnny English Reborn, Mr. Bean's Holiday, and Tooth. We also can't overlook Louise's ex-boyfriend, James Acaster, who she was dating around the same time her affair with Rowan began. During one of his performances in 2019, Acaster revealed he'd learned his girlfriend had left him for Atkinson by reading it in the newspaper. They'd been together for 2 years before she met Rowan. James admitted he noticed distance between him and Ford after she started performing in the play with Atkinson, yet he felt he had no reason to suspect an affair. Only when she and Rowan went public did James realize their relationship was over. Before Louise began publicly dating Atkinson, she'd gained significant attention for her role as Kate Middleton in Channel 4's The Windsors, a satirical take on the royal family. However, her controversial love life didn't particularly help her acting image. Despite harsh criticism of Rowan and Louise from his family and the press, the new couple continued their relationship. Soon they moved into the actor's North London home that remained his after the divorce. However, the pair tried their best to keep their romance as private as possible. They minimized public appearances and avoided commenting on their relationship to media. In 2017, Atkinson became a father for the third time. The couple welcomed their first child together, a daughter they named Isla Atkinson. Nearly 3 months after their daughter's birth, Atkinson and Ford were spotted together in public for the first time in a year, when they attended a party celebrating musical icon Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber's 70th birthday. But since then, the couple has done everything possible to keep their relationship away from camera lenses. After a break for family drama, Atkinson decided to return to cinema, starring in the third installment about Agent Johnny English titled Johnny English Strikes Again. Like previous franchise entries, the film was panned by critics, but grossed $159 million at the box office, $1 million less than its predecessor. When asked if there would be more Johnny English films, Rowan replied, "I doubt it, but thank you very much for implying you'd like to see another one. But at the same time, never say never." Well, he must have known something, because in 2024, filming was announced for a fourth installment about the notorious agent. Now, before we move to the final part of the video, we'd like to ask you to check if you're subscribed to our channel. If not, hit subscribe, click the bell icon so you don't miss new biographies, and we'll try to consider your suggestions for future stars while creating new quality content. Ready? Then let's continue. In 2019, the actor made a stunning announcement that he was taking a break from acting to care for his daughter Isla, so Louise could focus on her own acting career. The statement proved controversial, since in his time it was Rowan's first wife Sunetra who had sacrificed her career for her husband and children. It seemed he was willing to devote time to his daughter with Louise, but hadn't made the same sacrifice for his other 2 children when they were growing up. Rowan has been in his new relationship for over 10 years now, but the couple still hasn't married. Though there's been some media speculation, the lovers are in no rush to tie the knot. Perhaps Atkinson isn't interested in marrying again after his first marriage failed, or maybe the couple is content with their current relationship status. It's also possible Rowan is avoiding marriage because of how it might affect his first 2 children, Lily and Benjamin. One thing's for certain, Rowan's decision to follow his heart and end a long marriage to be with another woman clearly hurt his family and his reputation as an actor. We're not sure if he's managed to mend relationships with his children, but perhaps he's putting in the effort to fix the situation. We can't even imagine how difficult the divorce was for Sunetra and their children, so we hope they can eventually reconcile after everything that happened and find happiness in their lives with their blended family. After all the personal turmoil, Atkinson first reappeared in media spotlight in 2021 when he spoke out against cancel culture gaining momentum worldwide. At a press conference, the actor noted, "It's important that we're exposed to a wide spectrum of opinion, but what we have now is the digital equivalent of the medieval mob, roaming the streets looking for someone to burn." Atkinson added, "The problem we have online is that an algorithm decides what we want to see, which ends up creating a simplistic binary view of society. It becomes a case of either you're with us or against us. And if you're against us, you deserve to be canceled." The actor's career also began gradually recovering. In 2022, the star appeared in Netflix's comedy series Man vs. Bee, co-written by Atkinson and William Davies. The main character differs somewhat from the actor's usual roles. Here, Trevor is a decent family man who recently went through a divorce. He's strapped for cash but lands a job house-sitting for an extremely wealthy couple going on vacation. Everything seems fine until a bee flies into the house. The comedic tension builds gradually as Trevor's patience wears thin and he becomes increasingly obsessive and self-centered. The creators conceived the series during the pandemic when everyone was stuck at home, so they couldn't have chosen a more relevant theme than a man trapped in a space with his worst irritant. COVID restrictions made it hard to find a suitable home whose owners would allow a full film crew inside. They ended up shooting at multiple locations passed off as one. They built their own house set in a studio but still needed a garden, so they used 4 different garden locations, 2 or 3 interior locations, and 1 large soundstage. Naturally, this approach didn't simplify filming. The series frequently used wide shots, which thrilled Atkinson. "I'm a great believer in what Charlie Chaplin said, that life is a tragedy in close-up and a comedy in long shot," the actor noted. "If you sit back visually in a situation, it automatically becomes funnier." Interestingly, the bee in the series wasn't real, but a plastic prop. They hired special puppeteers to animate it for close-ups. In wide shots, Rowan had to imagine being chased by a bee that was added later in post-production. "I think the CGI, the bee is amazing. I think it's one of the finest CGI animals ever to be seen on screen," the actor admitted. In 2023, Atkinson appeared in the successful reimagining of Roald Dahl's work, director Paul King's musical fantasy comedy Wonka. It tells the origin story of Willy Wonka, the central character from the 1964 novel Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, depicting his early days as a chocolatier. Atkinson played Father Julius, a corrupt chocolate-addicted priest conspiring with the chocolate cartel. The film proved hugely successful, praised by critics and audiences alike, grossing over $632 million and making 2023's highest-grossing blockbusters list. Yet despite recent film and streaming roles, Rowan Atkinson will always be viewed through the lens of his most iconic character, Mr. Bean. The actor remains flattered that Bean is known worldwide, even in remote African villages where people watch his series on old VHS tapes played on a single black-and-white TV. Of course, he's often recognized on the street too, though sometimes with amusing results.
Yeah, the thing I find most tricky is when people don't recognize you particularly, but half recognize you. You know, it's that strange thing where they go... And of course that means they stare. They stare a lot, and they just look. You're sort of feeling, I wish that person wouldn't stare at me, so I'd rather just, hold up a flag saying, yes, yes, it's me.
After this, a conversation ensued where the actor tried convincing the man he really was Rowan Atkinson. The more he insisted, the less convincing he became. The funny part was how the man kept remarking on the uncanny resemblance and even asked Rowan if he'd ever considered a career as the star's look-alike. After a while, I had to bring the conversation to a close because not only was he not believing me, but he was getting quite annoyed, Atkinson recalled. I was pursuing this line, "I am Rowan Atkinson," when clearly he thought I was this total ass. Despite such humorous episodes, the star's fan base remains strong. Many consider Rowan Atkinson a national treasure. The actor himself believes this title carries great responsibility requiring corresponding behavior and, in his opinion, represents an excessive burden for its bearer. I've never wanted to be a role model. I hope I'm not a misbehaving man, particularly. But the idea of being someone that people look up to fills me with more fear than anything else. That's all for today. Thanks for watching till the end. We'd appreciate a like and comment. And if you want to learn about another film or TV star, click on the video appearing on your screen now. We'll say goodbye for a while and see you in the next video. Until next time.